Hello everyone, I'm Rode from your favorite YT channel General Thrillenture. Today I'm going to tell you about an old man who got a golden antique and got the ability to rejuvenate his youth, but he didn't know the price he paid. The story of the Devil's Silver Claw is that in 1536, an unknown alchemist used his own clock. Such an identity has been secretly researching a device that can rejuvenate people, and finally an object called Devil's Silver Claw was obtained by him. Time came to the beginning of the 20th century. This alchemist, who had lived for nearly 400 years, died in a building collapse. His chest was pierced by a piece of wood, and he was still chanting about the archangel in his mouth. After that, all the items in his residence collection were put up for public auction, but the mysterious Devil's Silver Claw was not mentioned in the listing. It is the protagonist of the story. He lives in a luxurious house with his young wife and little granddaughter. Every day, the white-haired uncle goes out with his little granddaughter. It turns out that he runs an antique shop. When he is free, he will hopscotch with him. This day just started not long after opening. The store ushered in the first customer. This person seemed to be looking for something. Here, look there. The white-haired uncle who has been in business for decades has been paying attention to this person's every move. The person seemed nervous and hurried away. The white-haired uncle came to the last statue he looked at. It was just an ordinary antique, and the statue's eyes were broken. He didn't take this matter to heart. The grandparents and grandson were playing jigsaw puzzles on the table and didn't pay attention. The cockroach crawled out of the hole in the statue. In order not to hurt his granddaughter again, he began to clean it up. After a while, he knocked and tapped on the base of the statue. It felt that it should be empty. The white-haired uncle decisively pried open the base, which was an old piece of wood. The cloth was carefully picked up, and the embroidered cloth was wrapped in a golden thing. The two looked at each other and smiled. This thing is worth a lot at first sight. The white-haired uncle looked at the door. The mysterious man wandering around in the shop was on the phone, so it turned out that he was really interested in the statue. The one who is interested is the curly-haired brother on the phone. His uncle is about to die. Uncle is suffering from many diseases. If it weren't for his wealth, the grass on the grave would have been 2 meters high. Because the curly-haired brother has been looking for people everywhere for decades, but unfortunately found nothing. But this time it was the one-eyed statue of Uncle Befa who caught their attention. He bought the angel statue without even paying the price. But he didn't know that the Devil's Silver Claw he was looking for was accidentally discovered by Uncle Befa. Uncle Befa carefully cleaned the dust and held it in his palm and tried it. Twisting the spring inside, it didn't seem to respond at first, but after a while, something like claws protruded from it, and within a second, it grabbed Uncle Befa's palm fiercely, and the blood flowed out in an instant, and there was a huge pain. The feeling made her quickly pull out this thing. After returning home, he did not tell his wife about it, but said that his wife, who was pierced by broken glass, pulled out a golden spike-like thing from it, which made the grandparents and grandson inexplicably nervous. Uncle Faw's appetite began to increase. He drank all the water in the refrigerator and even swallowed a plate of raw meat inside. He tried his best to blow the cold wind to calm himself down, but it didn't help. He was weak and thought of going under the bed. Baby, and let the spikes pierce into the palm again. Looking at myself in the mirror, I seem to be much younger. His radiant appearance makes my wife look dumbfounded. Obviously, the couple are very satisfied with this change. When I came to the antique shop, Uncle Befa found that the lock on the door was broken. After opening the door, the store was in a mess. Everything was smashed into a mess, and a business card on the table showed that it was the curly-haired brother who led someone. The white-haired uncle immediately realized that it was probably aimed at the Devil's Silver Claws. Brother Mao took him to meet his uncle. The Book of Death will be lost. I took out the notebook of the alchemist back then. It recorded that there was a special bug trapped in the Devil's Silver Claws. The energy of the dying uncle is eager to get it, but he just wants to use it to continue his life. After learning that the white-haired uncle had used it, he was shocked and quickly invited him out, but he did not know that there was nothing in the box. It's not a Devil's Silver Claw, but 2 locks. After returning home, the white-haired uncle was horrified to find that the things hidden under the bed were missing. missing. He was afraid that something might happen to his granddaughter and hurriedly found the utility room. Sure enough, he found it here. The granddaughter, who is well versed in the world, took the initiative to hand over the devil's silver claw hidden by him. After that, the white-haired uncle became obsessed with using the devil's silver claw. From time to time, he donated his own blood. There seemed to be some abnormalities in his body. The uncle and his wife seemed to have found the passion they had back then. They sprinkled dog food in the public, and it was a set. At this time, a person at the next table suddenly fell ill and began to vomit blood. The white-haired uncle suddenly lost his composure. The smell of blood made him inexplicable. He became agitated and followed the man all the way to the bathroom upstairs, and even started to lick the blood on the sink after the other person left. At this moment, a man came out of the toilet. The white-haired uncle quickly stopped this unbelievable behavior. He wiped off the blood stains while cursing. The bewildered white-haired uncle took advantage of the others leaving and didn't even let a single drop fall on the ground. When he was immersed in it, someone came over and kicked him unconscious. It turned out that curly-haired brother drove the comatose white-haired uncle to a cliff and fed him a lot of wine. In fact, curly-haired brother never knew what his uncle was looking for and what the white-haired uncle told him. After the truth, brother Curly laughed inexplicably. Being used by his uncle as a prostitute, he has always been dissatisfied with his uncle who is about to die. He never thought that a person who is about to die is delusional about prolonging his life and waiting to inherit the inheritance. Of course, brother Mao didn't want to, so he succeeded. Anyway, Uncle Beifa couldn't find out the location of the devil's silver claws, so let's keep this secret forever. He beat Uncle Beifa unconscious with his fist, and brother Curly released Uncle Beifa, entered the cab and pushed down the cliff together with people in the car. After the completion, he drank all the remaining white wine and threw it down. It is obvious that the white-haired uncle must be dead. The curly-haired brother who thinks his trick has succeeded listening to the song on the walkie-talkie, he called it over loudly, swearing, put on his clothes, and the curly-haired man passed by in minutes, was beaten with a cane by the checkmate uncle until blood flowed down, and the curly-haired guy thought it was a checkmate tree harmful, afraid of leaving a hole. He insisted that he did everything perfectly. The police would think that it was the white-haired uncle who fell off the cliff by mistake after being drunk. In fact, he was not about to die. The curly-haired brother didn't pierce the white-haired uncle. Because he has used the devil's silver claws, as long as the heart is not pierced, he will come back from the dead. The dying uncle beat the statues frantically to vent his anger. The staff in the funeral home are repairing the remains of the white-haired uncle. On the second day, he died. The curly-haired man went to his funeral on purpose to be cremated. Seeing that the white-haired uncle in the coffin showed no signs of resurrection, he happily stuffed the gum wrapper into the white-haired uncle's pocket. He was worried for the future. Just in case, I even pinched the white-haired uncle's nose for a while. During the cremation, because the cremator kept breaking down, the staff had to go down to repair and fiddle with it. After a while, the fire was successfully ignited. He didn't even notice the coffin at this time. The coffin was already empty, and as soon as the coffin was put into the incinerator, brother Curly walked in, claiming to be a friend of the deceased. Later, he just wanted to see the deceased for the last time. Looking at the raging fire in the incinerator, brother Curly showed a satisfied smile at this moment. The white-haired uncle who was successfully resurrected from the coffin has already come outside, randomly found a rotten blanket in the trash can to keep out the cold, and saw his death in the newspaper, explaining that in the heavy rain, the white-haired uncle called his wife, just called his the name was misunderstood by the wife as a sales call and hung up. The white-haired uncle vented his anger on the public phone. The little granddaughter heard grandpa's voice on the extension phone. The appearance of the person is because the white-haired uncle is very afraid of the sun at this time, and the little granddaughter thoughtfully prepared a bed for the grandfather in the utility room on the roof. His longing for his wife was written in a sentence on paper. Now he doesn't think there is any good in reviving the dead. He just wants to end all this as soon as possible. Only by finding the alchemist's notebook can the company of the checkmate book break the curse. The granddaughter successfully found the notebook. The The white-haired uncle began to read the contents with the help of a weak light, but the checkmate uncle had already discovered the relationship between the two. The traces indicate that the most important page has been torn off by myself, and she tore off the festering skin on the white-haired uncle's face, saying that the new skin inside is slowly growing. If you want to restore it as soon as possible, you must replenish humans. The white-haired uncle looked helplessly at his non-human and non-ghost appearance in the mirror, which was not what he wanted at all. He just wanted to get rid of all these things, but he could tell him the way by presenting this book, but he needed to get the devil's silver first. In desperation, the white-haired uncle had no choice but to do so, and took out this golden thing. Whoever killed him immediately took out a knife from the crutch and stabbed the white-haired uncle viciously. The white-haired uncle, who couldn't dodge, collapsed. The dead uncle on the ground rode on him and tried to pierce his heart directly. Fortunately, the little granddaughter on the other side also picked up a stick and knocked the dead tree unconscious to the ground. At this time, the curly-haired brother came up in the elevator and looked at the pool of blood. The checkmate book in the book is dancing with joy. Only when he dies will he have a chance to get a huge inheritance. The grandpa and grandson smashed the glass and escaped, attracting the attention of the curly-haired brother. He took the murder weapon and chased him all the way to the rooftop. The white-haired uncle could only follow the steel pipe and climb up to a higher billboard with his granddaughter. After making sure that the granddaughter climbed to a safe place safe and sound, the two separated. The duel between the two began immediately. Taking advantage of the distraction of the curly-haired brother, the white-haired uncle hugged her and jumped down together. The little granddaughter resurrected the white-haired uncle with the devil's silver claws. The resurrected white-haired uncle is tired of this form of death. Fu Sheng picked up the stone next to him and ruthlessly smashed the treasure in the eyes of others. Finally, the white-haired uncle who returned home waited quietly with the company of his family. Quietly waiting for death to come, and the story ends here. This is a suspenseful thriller film released in 1993. The film uses the background of occultism to pack a sad quasi-vampire story. The kind old man refuses to be controlled by the devil and prefers to suffer. I don't want to be a vampire even if I die. Overall, it looks more like a warm-hearted film in a horror cloak. It's more about the love between family members. Because the love of relatives finally overcomes the evil selfish desire. After all, immortality is so annoying. Longing but endless desire will make people fall into a terrible abyss. If there is such a treasure in the world, will human beings kill others for eternal life? Well, that's all for today's video. Subscribe Gen Thrillenture for seeing another interesting explanation. Love you, family.